In this video, we will explore a question that is a central question in many cases. Can I afford to keep the home? We will look at this question in two contexts. First, we will assume that there are enough other assets to enable a party to keep a home without needing refinancing. And then, we will look at a situation where a refinancing is necessary. Let's look at our sample situation. We have rain cloud and snow cloud, our two parties. We have two children for whom child support is going to be paid. Looking at the wages, rain cloud earns $85,000 per year, snow cloud $120,000 per year. Rain is the custodial parent for the children. Looking at the expenses, we go to client info and income and expenses. And just to shortcut entering expenses, because we're really exploring the question about whether they can keep the home, we're just going to go down to the miscellaneous line and enter rain as having $6,000 per month of expenses and snow as having $6,000 per month of expenses also. Of course, in an actual situation, what you would want to do is fill in all of the income and expenses so that your projections will be accurate. Now let's go look at the real estate property. We click the Client Info tab and then Assets and Debts. And we open the section on real estate. And here's the property that we have entered, 40 Weatherby Lane. The current value is $400,000. The first mortgage balance is $250,000. The monthly payment of principal and interest is $1,000. And the annual interest rate is 3%. Also, we have specified that Rain is the party that pays the mortgage. So now we have set up all the information we need to see whether Rain can continue paying the mortgage, can afford to keep the home in that respect. And all we have to do is go to Reports and look at the budget report and scroll down to the bottom line. And we see that on a monthly basis, Rain is positive $356 after all expenses. So in this case, if we feel confident in our assumptions about the incomes and expenses, we can conclude that Rain can afford to keep the home. Now, one caveat is that child support received by Rain is almost $1,500. So if that child support is going to end in any near term, we may have to revise our consideration of whether Rain can afford to keep the home. But if the children are young and the child support is going to continue during the entire time that Rain expects to live in the home, then we can feel comfortable in our conclusion on this basis that Rain can, in fact, afford to keep the home. So far, we have assumed that there are enough other assets so that Rain can continue to keep the home without having to give any of the equity in the home to Snow. But let's suppose that the home is the only asset of any significant value in the situation. Then Rain is going to have to find a way, if Rain wants to keep the home, to give Snow some of the equity in the home. And the way that this is typically done is by a buyout refinance mortgage. So let's see how to do that. We go back to our Assets and Liabilities page, and we click More Info. The first thing we want to do is find out how much equity there is in the home. So we go to the Division of Marital Properties section, and let's suppose that Rain is going to keep 50% of the equity in the home. We look at Snow, and if Rain keeps 50% of the equity in the home, then Snow would be keeping $75,000, as would Rain. So we need to find some way to get Snow to end up with $75,000. And the way that we would do that would be to take out a refinancing mortgage, increase the mortgage by $75,000, and give that amount to Snow. So let's see how that works. Let's go back to our first mortgage, which is currently not a refinancing mortgage, with a current balance of $250,000 and a monthly payment of $1,000. And let's now enter a new mortgage instead which is a refinancing mortgage. So we'll say yes to the question, will the mortgage be a new or refinancing mortgage? And let's see how we make these entries. So we enter the monthly payment before the refinancing is $1,000 per month, and the interest rate before the refinancing was 3%. The software uses this to calculate the budget in the current year before the refinancing. Now, what is the new mortgage amount going to be? The old mortgage amount was $250,000, and we need to add $75,000 to that. So it's going to be $250,000 plus $75,000, or $325,000. We'll say that it's a 30-year mortgage. We'll say that the anticipated closing date is December 1 of the current year. We're recording this video in 2020, so that would be December 1, 2020. We could enter refinance costs payable by rain and snow. For simplicity, we're not going to do that. We'll assume that the new interest rate is the same as the old interest rate at 3%. If the interest rate is different, that will affect the results, of course. And the mortgage balance at refinance, we will say, is $250,000, the same as the current balance. It typically will not be exactly the same as the current balance, but for simplicity, we'll say that it is the same. And amount of proceeds being kept by rain is 0. And the software calculates that the amount of proceeds being kept by snow is $75,000. This is exactly what we wanted. If you want to do a refinance where each party is keeping some of the proceeds, you can do that as well. So if rain were going to be keeping $20,000 of the proceeds, the software would calculate that snow keeps $55,000 because we've increased the mortgage by $75,000. So the software will automatically calculate the amount kept by the other party once you enter the first party's amount. All right, so now we have entered the refinancing mortgage, and now let's go look at the division of property. Because after this refinancing, rain is going to keep 100% of the value of the property, and we want to indicate that in the software. The way that you enter information about the home in the software always is to pick a snapshot of a moment in time and enter everything as it is at that moment in time. In this case, the moment in time we're picking is just after the refinancing, a little bit later in the current year. So going to the division of marital property, we want to say that 100% of the value is being kept by rain and none of it is being kept by snow. To see whether rain can afford this, we will go back to the budget report. But before we do, let's go look at the division of property report and see how this all played out. So we go to negotiate and divide property. And here we are on the property division report. So we see first that rain keeps 100% of the value of the equity, which is $75,000, and snow has $75,000 in mortgage refinance proceeds, which the software automatically placed in Snow's column. The result is that each party ends up with 50% of the equity in the home, and the property is divided equally between the parties. Now let's go look at the budget report and see whether Rain was able to pull this off. One thing to observe here is that we are looking at the budget report for next year, not the budget report for the current year. Why are we doing that? Well, the refinancing is not happening until fairly late in the year, and so the current year's numbers will not be an accurate projection of whether Rain will be able to afford the mortgage on a going forward basis. 2021 is the first full year in which the payments under the new mortgage will be effective. The software does have inflation built in, both for wages and expenses, although in both cases you can click the More Info buttons for those entries and specify that you don't want inflation to be a factor. So we see that Rain's wages have increased by inflation. The child support has not. The child support stays constant. We see the new mortgage payments on the refinance mortgage. The other expenses have gone up by an inflation factor. We scroll down and we see the taxes, and at the bottom line, we see that Rain almost exactly breaks even under the new circumstances, shouldering the entire mortgage. This is a pretty close case, and you would talk with Rain and Snow carefully before moving forward. And after the discussion, you might decide that yes, it's going to be close, but you have looked at all the expenses very carefully, and you think Rain can swing it. In other situations, you may find that it is really impossible, and that would help Rain avoid making what could be a very serious mistake. And that concludes our video explanation of determining whether a party can afford to keep the home. Thanks for watching.